On some different shit, I'm leaving other things behind. Never scared of working hard, I stay on the grind. Money on my mind, call it superficial, but that superficial ritual pursuing rental. From landlord to landlord into land hoarding. Vortex teleporting or sporting in cars foreign. Fantasizing the Astons and Aspen. Got me grasping the pen bass like taxmen. On my zen in the lion's den, call me Goliath. If you excited to try it, watch for Watts riots. These Watts wired, vocal voltage, no need for coaching unless it's coach coats or bags toting.
Yeah, so welcome to the stage, Queen Herawin. What's going on?
I'm here. Am I in the building with Wordsworth? Oh my God. I'm here. I'm hyped. Let's go. Let's get
it. Good day. How's everything going?
Everything is going well. Thank you so much for having me. Shout out to the brothers, of course, the Juggaknots, got to shout out my brothers and them. But yeah, I'm doing really good.
I'm excited to have you here. Congratulations on your daughter graduating.
Yes, thank you. I'm so hyped.
This show is about writing, and I've seen you write everything, different things. Mm-hmm. And you shouting out your brothers, the Juggaknots. That actually leads to my first question is the originality. See, so I've known y'all for mad long, but the one thing that has always stood out from since the Juggaknots have started and your brother Breeze and everything, Kev, and just that originality of the flow. So I've always, I can say kind of like I got some influences. People might say some Nas, I got G-Rap, I got KRS, all these different things in me that I can grab. I don't know where. Do you know where Breeze started this flow? And like, where you got, who's the influence of this flow? And then I got another question about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to start with that one, or do you want to? Okay,
yeah, start with that one.
So that's a really great question. That's a question that probably you're gonna have to have him on the show too, like on another date, because he can give more information. I don't want to misrepresent my brother, but I remember for us growing up, major influences that stood out immediately. Rakim immediately for him, and I remember special ed being really huge for him too, as far as influence wise. Now I know there are so many others, or maybe a few others. I don't want to say so many, a few that really inspired him. I'd go out on the limb and say G-Rap too, but again, I know for a fact who hasn't G-Rap influenced, right? So let me say that generally speaking, but for sure Rakim, and for sure special ed. That I will say.
So then he gets influenced by them and some others. He still comes with this original flow. Then you're being the sister, right? And you're coming up, and I've known you from like before putting music out, like albums out and stuff. Yeah. And I remember you having a similar cadence and then figuring out how to make this cadence you though. So like y'all rhyme in a similar form, but it's still like if I hear you, I can still hear some nuances. So how did you kind of make those adjustments as you began making your own stuff to kind of have you still part of the group, but separate yourself a little?
That's a really good question. One, I'm going to say I'm me, so I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that. But no, that's a serious question because I've heard people throughout time say like, that makes it sound like time is like long. But throughout time, yes. I've heard people say, yo, you sound like Breeze. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's an amazing compliment because to me, Breeze is one of the illest MCs ever, like on the planet to me. And I think to quite a few people. Right. As far as standing out, it's funny when I think about it. And this is something Breeze and Kev, and we speak about this sometimes. Kev often will say, like, you're this hybrid of Breeze and me, like, And so I don't think that that's untrue from a space of like inspiration and sound, right? But then there's also inspiration outside of the home. So inside the home, they definitely inspired me, hands down. And from a stylistic standpoint, Kev's style as an MC, and I think this comes from a time space. Like Kev's the eldest out of us, And
Okay.
so for him, I would say that one of his biggest influences was Public Enemy, right?
Yeah.
Again, major, right? But also I remember Run DMC, you know, just because of the time period for sure. And obviously they're icons as well. But when you think about cadence and you talk about cadence, rhyme wise, it was a lot more like ABAB, AABB. Like it was a lot more just simple. There was a lot more space as far as how space was being utilized
Yeah.
between the words. It wasn't as, you know, compact lyrically. When Rakim now changes the game, at least again, in my opinion, lyrically, a lot less space and then moments, pockets of space here and there. But like da 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 da, like there was a lot more back to back rhythmically.
Yeah.
He was playing with space differently than when we think about Public Enemy, when we think about, you know, Chuck D, when we think about you know, Run DMC. And so there's this more old school boom bap, very spatial thing happening with Kev, with how he rhymes. And I think that's because of his influence. Then you have Breeze, again, Rakim, Special Ed, where things get a lot tighter, right? And more compact.
Yeah.
A lot more words, still being done creatively, a lot more words and still moments of space. Like I said, when you put that together, for me, I think I do that from a writing standpoint, right?
Yeah.
It's this hybrid between a lot of words, some pauses. I saw Breeze really master that, and stuff like him writing like "I'm gonna kill you." He does that so poetically, where he uses space, and it really stood out for me there. And I'm like, damn, that didn't rhyme. That's amazing. It gives it a full stop, right?
Yeah.
It pauses you, and then you come back in. So there's so much functionality with like near rhyme, things that don't rhyme, extra space. And as a writer, over a period of time, you become cognizant of it. And I think, and then that's where you can really play and like manipulate things. I remember Breeze telling me maybe a couple of years into me getting serious of writing, he was like, you're doing so much stuff that's really cool that you don't even realize you're doing it. You're doing it, but I don't know if you realize you're doing it. Like, I don't know if there's an awareness that you're doing it intentionally, or you're kind of just having fun from a creative space and it's coming out. And I think that's also the process too, is just like experimenting with the things that influence you, how that helps you develop and evolve as a writer. And then eventually it's not just playing with something, it's like, oh, that's what that is. So there was the home influence, and then there was the environmental. I mean, Slick Rick, we lived in the Northeast Bronx. We were like in that same area. So then for me, it was also environmental. Rick, for me, you know, MC Light. So it was things I was hearing, Video Music Box after school, after Bob Ross, you know, and then how that inspired me, Big Daddy Kane, EPMD. And then the inside, what I saw as far as people, actually creators developing that happened to also be my family. So I think it was a combination of all of that. And then as I played with the pen more and I got more into it, there are remnants where people can probably, yes, hear Breeze, possibly also hear Kev. But I think over time it got so solidified that it's like, oh, that's Heroin. But
Yeah.
people who really know the history can see some resonance there. Yeah.
I think so too. I think it's kind of like that thing of, if you would have only done 1 or 2 verses and then chill, then you would have probably been like held under that like umbrella of like sounding like, but like
sure.
you've done so much to solidify your identity with what you've done that it allows you to have that separation, also being unified with the fam. So I got a question about, as far as when you're creating, are you on paper, computer, phone, in your head? How do you write your lyrics? Because I think some people be wondering, like, you know.
That is a great question. And I'm going to say I write still. I got my pad here always on my desk.
Okay.
I write. I do all of them. A, B, C, D, E, all of them, all the above. That's my
Okay.
answer for that one right there, because where I'm at plays a major role into how I'm developing my thoughts. So for instance, if I'm in the car, if I'm in the whip, I love listening to music in the car. Not just music for recording, but instrumentals. I listen to the car. And that's where I would say in the head, that's where it starts to develop, because I'll play something and then I get a vibe, I get a feel for it, hopefully. Because I saw, some of the previous podcast stuff, and Thurston Howell was talking about his whole process as well, as far as really having to feel and connect to a beat. And that really resonated with me, right? I think for most of us, if not all of us. So I could be in the car and start developing ideas in my head, which will usually come as melodies, cadences, like flows, ideas, not a specific word or words necessarily, but almost kind of like mumbling thoughts. And then it starts evolving and developing into actual words, actual, like maybe even a bar or two. But traditionally, it'll be more flow patterns. It'll be possibly hooks. And if I start writing a verse.
Yeah, when you're doing that, right? You're in the car. So you're
Yeah.
getting these ideas going.
Yeah.
Being that you're still doing paper, how do you capture those moments? Do you grab the phone and do the scatting in the phone? Do you just lay the lyrics down? So you're combining both?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. I totally combine them. So if I'm doing that and I really get a rhythm going, I use my notes in the phone. I use the note section, the notepad, the most. That's what I do the most. So if I'm really going, I don't want to say this because it's not the safest, but I will like type it into my notes while I'm driving. I'll be like,
I don't think you're the only one. I don't think you're the only one doing that.
I'm like, oh goodness.
I know there's some people that be like, I'll talk to and they'll be like, yo, I hit that microphone, just say it instead. But I'm like, I don't know. I get the vibe, like you might feel like saying it. It might not work out, but yeah.
I still type it out. I prefer to type it out. I guess it makes better sense and it's safer to just kind of use the voice memo. Right. But there's something about writing it out to me, especially if I'm like, oh, nah, that word, so I just like writing it. I like writing it somewhere. And if it's not a notebook, it's definitely in the phone. I use the phone the most, but depending on environment. Also, I write late at night. For those who know, I'm up 11, 12, 1. It's so bad. My sleeping is horrible. But I write when it's quiet, and that's when I'm in my notes, too, on the phone.
Okay, because I was going to ask you that as well, as far as the atmosphere when writing. But do you feel that writing it on the computer or phone, you lose a certain emotional attachment to it because you're not writing with paper? That's what I've heard from some people. They're saying it doesn't feel the same. Like I'm not, that there's an emotional attachment when you're writing it with paper versus the computer.
You know what I'll say to that? I do understand that from a firsthand standpoint. I think because of practicality, the phone for me, I don't detach to the emotion just because it's the phone now.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to journal on paper. Like I have journals and I'll journal on there. I don't write rhymes as much on there, but I think that has to do with the evolution of technology too, because when I think about when I first started writing before cell phones and all that, I have notebooks of rhymes, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think it was the time. And it's not to say I don't go back there and do that, but the phone is just so easy because sometimes if I'm in the studio and I have my whatever I wrote out, I'll screenshot it. My daughter makes fun of me. She's like, you screenshot everything, Mom. Like you don't have to do it. I screenshot it. I'll put my phone on airplane mode so that nobody's interrupting in my session. It doesn't ring. And then I have the picture of it and I will just go. If it's something like brand new that, I don't have it retained here, but it's there and I've been practicing it a bit. So the phone really becomes a major functional tool to house your creativity. The only thing that I think gets sketchy with it that is beautiful about the old school way of writing, because at this point it almost just feels more aesthetic to have it. It almost feels like just more of almost like a archival, piece of artwork, honestly. But the thing that gets a little scary is if something happens to your phone and you don't have it written down somewhere, it's a wrap. So
I've lost the whole computer. I got a MacBook still sitting here, lost mad rhymes, and my mindset was just like, yo, just keep it moving. I just had to be like, keep it moving. I can't get the rhymes back. It's a done deal. I'm just gonna keep moving, and I could create more rhymes, So
absolutely, I think that's really important too. Is like the art of detachment, because things happen. We've lost whole songs and equipment or things like that. So that's important too. But having it somewhere tangible is great. It's just I don't think it's as practical now anymore.
So how about, you said you like to write normally at night? So what's the atmosphere? Is it like night with TV on, radio on? I've seen I had a friend tell me Jay-Z was writing in the studio and he came into the lounge and they turned the TV off and Jay-Z was like, nah, leave the TV on. Like, so everybody has these different atmospheres of when they like to write. So is it night only or?
Oh, nah, I'll write whenever. However, I find that I'm super productive with writing either early morning or late at night into the morning hours. So like early morning, 5, 6, 7 a.m. or late at night, 11, 12, 1, 2. But again, from a practicality standpoint, you may not have the convenience to just say, hey, that's the window I'm going to work in, right? So I'm really big on also just being inspired. And if I hear something and I love it, I don't like to open up a beat. If someone sends me a track, I don't like to open it unless I know I have time to write to it. So sometimes I'll just let the beat kind of sit for a day or two, because when I do open it, if I love the track, I'm going to want to be able to write. And that could be 2:00 in the afternoon. It could be, during the day. But I think, again, when we're talking about just trying to produce and being productive, Breeze loves the phrase productivity over perfection, right? Production over perfection, right? So we're at the stage, you've been doing this how long? We've been doing this how long? Where you have to really approach it sometimes from not a space of nostalgia, but from a space of work ethic. And that might mean working at 12:00 and you're like, yo, I'm going to really see what I can do. It doesn't mean it's going to be the most amazing verse at that point. But when you get into a rhythm, it's kind of like meditation. You're like, I don't feel like meditating. But when you get into that space after 5, 6, maybe 10 minutes, things get quiet and you get into a zone and a space of whatever that Zen space is for you. And I don't think that's dissimilar in a creative space. It may take you a minute to kind of thaw out creatively, but once you get there, then you kind of go. So whether that's 12 p.m., 12 a.m., I have times where I think it's easier, and I think that's because it's quiet. So to your point about the TV, I think it's cool. It's a cool question because, we're both educators as well. And so I have had students who they can't listen to anything. They need quiet and in order to focus. And then I have students who need music. They need TV. They need music. My daughter is like that. During these years of education, I'm like, the TV is on. And we're old school in the sense, you had to turn that TV off if you're doing the work. So it might have been also.
They want headphones in, doing homework, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so I think it depends. Sometimes people need background noise in order to get quiet, and some people need quiet to stay quiet and get focused. It really depends on style. I prefer quiet usually because I'll start getting connected to whatever it is I'm listening to.
So now that you prefer quiet and you're there, do you prefer writing in the studio or writing home and bringing it in?
Because, oh God, no, home. Thank you for this question. Thank you for this question.
I try to ask these things that we go through as artists. That's what I try to ask these questions. So, what's your preference? I can do either or, but my preference is the time I'm allowed at home, right? So what are you with?
Same. Technically, can I do it in the studio? Yes, but I mean, I recently had an experience where I wish I would have had more time at home with something because I just think I would have done a better job at it. I like to live with things sometimes. You don't always have that ability. You don't always have that luxury. you know, this is it's really a great question on so many levels, because I think people who, okay, I don't know why basketball is coming into my head, probably because I have all brothers, right? All right. So it's like, if let's to reminisce and you know, put some flowers on this man, which we do with Kobe. Let's say Kobe's still here. Let's say he's still here, and you say, yo, Kobe, take that game shot. Take that game shot. You got 2 seconds, 3 seconds on the clock. More than likely, Kobe gonna hit that shot.
Right.
Why is Kobe gonna hit that shot? Because Kobe did it all the time. And I don't mean shooting in a game. I mean practice, in and out, eat, sleep this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a mother. I'm an educator. Like, I don't eat, sleep this all day. Now, am I hip hop all day, every day? Is it running through my veins? Absolutely. Don't get it twisted. Yes. However, I don't do this all the time. I don't have that luxury. There's bills and stuff like that. So it's like, I wish I could effortlessly, hey, put me in the studio and just do this, because there's people who does this all day, every day. I'm very passionate about this topic, because you can almost feel like, damn, am I effective here? Like, did I lose my little rusty? You know, because you're not in that practice mode all the time. So like you said, it can be done, but is it going to be my optimal best? Maybe not. Maybe I'll strike gold that day, but I prefer to do it at home, because I'll have time to actually edit. I believe in editing. I believe in getting it as tight as possible. Like, you know, and home you can do that.
I think you used a great word with it. It's optimal versus opportunity, because right,
bars.
You right. You know, like how great it can be, but there's situations that might be a paying situation. Hey, I need this by tomorrow, and you like, when does it need to be done? Yo, you got like 4 hours. If I get it back in 4 hours, so now you're like, okay, how do I combine the both? Because sometimes I know having more time, this is going to be maybe up here. So I think a lot of times, you know, how do you feel about those situations? Do you feel, despite the time frame you have, that you've given some optimal? I think a lot of us are trained to still give an optimal verse. I think it just eats us away, knowing that if we had more time, we think it would be better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the phrase that you just said, optimal versus opportunity, because the opportunity may present itself and you only have that 4 hours, or you only have that 24 hours even, which seems like a lot of time, but you know, you got to perform, and you want to perform at your highest, because that's the thing with us. It's like, once it's out there, and that's it. There's no going back on that. So yeah, listen, if I had more time on certain verses, I think it would have made a complete difference. But do we always have that? Like I said, luxury? No, because opportunity strikes. But you will give it your all, whatever that looks like in that moment. I do agree with you on that. There's never a situation where I'm like, I'm a slack ever. And because of us being super professional at a certain level and real people of this craft and culture, it does bother you, or it certainly bothers me, if I know that I could have performed better. And again, I just think it comes to how often you're doing this. How often are you in practice? You know, and when you're juggling multiple roles and multiple things, it doesn't excuse it, but it does help people to understand and rationalize. Like, sometimes I'm not writing bars, I'm writing lesson plans, you know, and it's just the reality of what it is. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Trust and believe. I wish I could go back to a few situations specifically. And then the odd thing is that there's times I'll write a verse 2 hours, 45 minutes, a half an hour. You know, I've shared stuff with Breeze, and he's like, when did you write that? I'm like, yeah, I just wrote it. Took me about 40 minutes, half hour, you know, and it just flows.
Yeah, I think the topic, you know, depending on the topic, for me with stuff, a lot of times it's the topic. So if I'm writing some relationship stuff, that might be able to knock out faster. Writing some, maybe you just doing some type of freestyle, I might take longer. And then when it's stories, I'm definitely going to take a minute, because it's so many perspectives you're trying to bring into play. So I think it's cool when people can respect that to get what they expect from us, that it does take time. So I don't, people out there sometimes may think like, yo, can you write that for me and like, have it by tomorrow, and just think what they're hiring you for took you 10 minutes. I think there needs to be kind of an understanding of, to get some of these quality verses, it takes time. And then also understanding that have some leniency to give those people time when writing that stuff. So so we discussed kind of like how long does it take to write a rhyme. So when you're writing, you get a beat that you like. Is it I'm gonna knock this out today because I'm so hype on the beat? Because sometimes you have a beat and you got, yo, I'm gonna knock this out right now. And then sometimes you'd be like, I gotta take a minute on this. Is a special joint. So
yes,
what's that debate like?
That's a really great breakdown right there. Like I have a verse right now that I have to write. I'm really excited about the collaboration, and so I'm like, yo, you gotta go in. You got you got to make sure every line, it's just like, you're putting your heart into it. And again, it's not that you don't do that with everything, but when there's a consciousness, like the collaboration, you want to put it on it, a certain way. So for me, again, it varies. It definitely varies on how long it will take. But if I hear a beat that I absolutely love and I'm inspired, I can write for hours and come back to it, and then come back to it and keep coming back to it. Like I will be addicted. If I have the time, again, which is the optimal thing, if you have the time, I can write for a long time. And that's usually, when I say hours, I mean not just flushing it out, but revision. Oh, what's the name of this movie? Oh, it's going to bother me. Anyway, maybe it'll pop up as we're talking about everything together. But in the movie, the main character talks about, it's really about writing, right? And also about ethnicity and how people, I guess, will assume there's this young Black writer, and they were assuming that, I guess, he wasn't as profound as he was because of his age and because of who he was, right? And where he was from. But he had a mentor, and the mentor was like, just write. Just flush it out. You can always go back and edit, right? Just get it out first. And so part of it for me is getting it out. And then, so when I'm saying hours, that's also going back now and saying, was that the strongest line? Was that the strongest word? Oh, can you extend that? Can you play on that a little bit more? So the revision is really important. And that's, to me, where it's really, really at, because that's the details. How do you make it as tight as possible? So, it could take a while, but I ultimately want to have it hit a certain way. And that's crafting it,
Yeah. So that means, so when you're crafting it, are you writing to the beat, or you have your verses prepared? So you're crafting it. Do you? Yeah. So that's because that when we were younger, right?
Yeah.
When we were younger, and the game is kind of different, it's still similar in some ways, but when we were younger, it was a lot of, you come outside your house, somebody on the corner is rapping, you got a battle right there, or somebody's rapping, there's a cipher outside. I got 20 verses in my head. You have all these rhymes. You had 20 verses. I got no verses, y'all. I have none in my head. I keep it 100. I have none.
That's crazy coming from you.
I have no verses in my head. I don't. I write everything to the beat. I'll freestyle right there on the spot though. I'll write on, I can freestyle on the spot and stuff like that. If I'm going up, if I'm going up to a show, Sway in the morning, maybe, or something like that. We going up to with Eclipse in them and everybody and rocking up there. I'll have some verses, of course. I got verses on songs, but like as far as this happening there. So what's that like now for you as far as, do you write everything to the beat? You said you journal and you write stuff. Do you have stuff laying around and you're like, okay, this will marry that?
So for the most part, I write to the beat. I love writing to a track because for me, I just enjoy the inspiration. And so when you use the perfect word marry, for me, a beat and a verse or a beat and a concept, and then therefore the writing have to marry. I'm really big on that. Like the tone and the feel of it, it should go together. They should complement each other. It's like straight peanut butter and jelly for me with that. Like it's got to work together perfectly. And then once I'm in that space, yes, it will help me to kind of zone and write. Now, I may have a concept, but not necessarily all of the language is there yet. But I'll have a concept, and then there's situations where I'll hear a beat and develop a concept in rhymes. Then there are other times when I have a concept and I'm looking for a beat to marry or match that. But I traditionally write to the beat because it just helps to keep me inspired and helps to keep me going, and the momentum is there. I prefer that. This is a really interesting thing because I've always been in awe. Breeze can write. Like he doesn't need the beat to write. And although I can write without the beat, it's just really big for me from a space of inspiration. Right.
Yeah.
But he will just now, does he also write to the beat? I'm sure he does. But I know him for sure to just write. And then he can match it. He'll be like, okay, cool. I think he does a combination as well. But I almost want to say he might be more dominant with the writing first, which I think is amazing. It's very scientific to me.
Yeah, I thought that was wild too. Because well, I know typically it used to be like that back in the days anyway. You have a verse ready and then somebody DJ threw the beat on and y'all freestyling anyway, right? You have verses laying around. But then I also thought when I heard Guru used to come to the studio and then say the rhymes to fit a primo beat. So he had verses laid out already. So it's so many different strategies and techniques to it. But once I started getting more into the storytelling and like concepts, I started saying, let me listen to the beat to give me
that's what I'm saying.
Give me the setting and the tone and where I'm going with this, because and then I've written a verse or something, listen to it, and then be like, give me a whole different concept, and I erase that verse and be like, you know what, this don't sound like that. Oh, this sound more like that, and then I go back and write something new. So I think it's important. I think it work either way because you might not be able to tell sometimes anyway. But
you know what, too, though?
Personal preference.
Yes, it's personal preference for sure. But you said something to me that's spot on, and it resonates the same for me as far as in the beginning, when I think back to times, and we definitely go way back here, like straight New Eurekan Cafe, outside of New Eurekan, spitting like in a cipher. In those moments, yes, I just wrote. I just wrote to have verses for moments like that because it wasn't as much at that time about song development. It was about sharpening your sword. It was about community and building and like seeing who's out there and making sure your joint was like your verse was crazy. And so it was more having a mean 16, but multiple ones. So you could easily write and those would go anywhere, right?
Yeah,
whether it's
random thoughts. Just a whole bunch of random thoughts.
Exactly. But once we started really, I think, just evolving in our own craftsmanship in the sense of song development and concepts, now it's a different relationship with the beat. It's not just spitting a verse to spit a verse. It's what am I saying? Why am I saying this? Why is this relevant? And how is that connecting to people?
Right. So that's why. So over time, your writing changed since you started, right? And then I'm sure like early on you were rapping about things, but then now that we're older, you got more to rap about. So how has your writing changed since those days of New Eurekan to then getting started with finally starting to get your rhyming on the albums with your brothers, and then like venturing into your own stuff, and now we're full straight adults and got kids and everything. So what's the difference? What would you say are the stages of differences?
I think the stages of difference, and you mentioned this word when we started talking, identity. I think initially you're trying to create a sense of identity for yourself. You're trying to prove to yourself first that you're legitimate in this creative space. Right. And so, like that's the most, I think, important part. And then once you convince yourself that you have something, I'm not even going to go out there and say, yo, I'm the truth, I'm the best, I'm the illest, that you have something significant, then I think you can come out and start sharing that. Right. And so for me, it was very much that. I remember having conversations with Breeze like, Yeah, nah, you gonna have to go back to the drawing board on that. But it's a good start. You got some cool stuff happening there. You know, he was really instrumental from a space of mentorship, because by the time I started getting serious with writing, he was already writing for quite a few years already.
Right.
So it was an inspiration, yes, but it was also a form of mentorship as well, like within the home, just by default. At times that frustrated me. It was really frustrating because I thought, hey, I'm young and I'm cool and I'm dope, so get out of here. I don't want to hear that. But then I had to really be like, yo, let me have some reverence, put some respect on that man's name, because he know what he's doing. He had written the Clear Blue Skies album, Kev, you know, they had put that out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I really respected him as well. And so there was this push and pull between wanting to be really good, hearing that there were things I needed to work on, being young enough, being too young to really be able to fully receive the critique and not take it from a space of ego, or feel hurt by it. But even
Yeah.
when it did do that, it pushed me. So even when I had those moments like, oh man, damn, you know, they don't love this, go back to the drawing board, it pushed me. It didn't push me away. It pushed me more into it. I leaned more into it. And Kev was mentorship too, because he was heavy on the beat production. And I remember him telling me, I used to write to the instrumental to who got the props. That was one thing that I did repeatedly over and over. I remember that, like, listen, you know, shout out to Black Moon, shout out to Evil D, Beat Minds. Like,
Yep.
I listened to that over and over, and it was a template for practice. It was like a drill for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Kev used to say to me too, two things. If you can't rhyme when it gets faster, oh, they gave me drills. If you can't rhyme when it gets faster, you're not ready. And if you can't rhyme, and this was a tricky one, if you can't rhyme with someone writing over it, hearing lyrics over it, you're not ready. Like, instrumental, yes, but can you do it with hearing someone's verse over it? So they put me in straight boot camp. Talk about boot camp click. They put me in boot camp click for real, you know? So there was levels to the game and getting better. And then I think eventually they really started seeing the development, and they were like, okay, she's ready. Because I didn't just become a juggernaut just because I'm family. It was like, no, you got to be ready for this, from a space of, you know, craft and being sharp enough. Now, I think what also really helped me was doing collaborations. You know, shout out to Wordsworth. You know, I expanded my network and worked with other people, where I wanted to make sure that my work also fit and complemented the artists that I was working with, like Master Ace, you know, which was also when he heard Ambition. That's how the Ace situation happened. He hit me up like, yo, joint you did on the Ambition joint, that was kind of crazy. All right, I might have something for you. So as you know, as you evolve, it builds confidence, but it also builds community, because people start seeing it, and then that also sharpens the sword. So there's levels. But as far as now, you're right, like, it's about what story am I telling. Yeah, I could write a 16, yeah, I could write just some freestyle verse, but what am I saying as a grown-up? And the album coming out definitely speaks to real, mature, adult like topics, that we need to discuss and talk about, right? It's important. It becomes a form. I like the word artivism. You know, I've been hearing that term the past few years, like really like get huge. And I think that's real, because we can use it as a vehicle for awareness and change. And at this level of the game, we shouldn't just be talking nonsense. You know, you can do that, but it should have more validity to it as well.
So being an educator, some people do know, some people might not know that you're an educator, you've been a teacher, you've taught on every level, you're a professor and everything like that. What would you say are the similarities between making a lesson plan and making a song?
Oh, man.
So what's that, you know, the icebreaker in the beginning, that first line, you know, so on and so forth. How do you kind of look at them similarly?
It's probably one of the best questions I've ever received. You good at this, Words. You good at this.
I'm trying.
Nah, you doing. I would say that there are definite similarities, both in the writing and developing portion of it, and also the actualization and the action part of it, right? Meaning, so with a lesson plan, you have a concept. With a song, you have a concept. So there's an immediate similarity there, right? With a song, you want to have some type of specific direction and flow. And I just mean section, like let's say like beginning, middle, end, right? So it should have some kind of directional flow and pattern, right?
Dope.
With a lesson plan, very similar. Like you mentioned, okay, what is your icebreaker? So what is your do now, right? What are your objectives? What are the learning targets, aka objectives? What's the procedure? Is there a follow-up, right? So there's similar things from a structural aspect. And the more you write rhymes, or you're a writer, whatever you write, and the more you teach, you start to get a really sound, I'll say, template or structure. So that when you go back into writing a new lesson, regardless of the topic or unit, and you go back into writing a new song, regardless of the concept, there's some kind of a framework. And after a while, instead of having to look at a structured, like mapped out framework, certainly for my lesson plans, I have like a template that I use.
Yeah.
I'll modify it, adjust it depending on what I'm teaching, but it's pretty much the same. With the writing at this point, it's almost more like an informal structure where the structure kind of more lives here than a physical template, but it's a very similar process. And then when you're presenting it, here's the wild thing, and this happens with verses too. You could have a verse, you spit it, and then halfway through or a portion through, maybe you forget some of it and you end up having a freestyle. with a lesson plan, you can have a lesson, you think it's going to go according to plan from beginning to end, and something happens in the middle. A kid comes in late, somebody gets sick, a little fight break out, something, and it switches it up. How do you now freestyle? You can't refer back to the rest of that lesson like, hey kids, hold on, step number 3 in the procedure. Nah, you have to use that moment and navigate that. And that you get better at navigating those moments through experience, but you also get better at navigating it by having that template to begin with, because it gives you some kind of a structure. And either space, you're rhyming if you're on stage, you spitting bars in front of the classroom, you're entertaining those kids, hopefully, or students, hopefully you're engaging them the way you would engage. You do callbacks. You know, the other day I did a speaking event. It was like people were talking all crazy. I'm like, and everybody, and they were educators, so they knew, and everybody did the response thing. What's going on, y'all? Juggaknots say, when I say Juggaknots, you say. So there's so many parallels that I don't think, you know, people who do both and coexist in both worlds can really really appreciate that, because they'll see that similarity.
So that goes to writing curriculums infused with hip hop. What's that like? So how did you become comfortable doing it? Was it something you saw in the classroom that you would? I think as hip hoppers, we're kind of like, it's impossible not to do something hip hop. It's like, what it could be eating, you got a certain style, you could be walking. It's just whatever we do, it's something with hip, right? So was it like you were teaching in classes and was like, man, I taught it like this because, you know, we learned that from hip hop, or we did it like this. And then what gave you that confidence to start infusing hip hop in the curriculum?
That's another really solid question. So the first thing that comes to my mind is the organization Next Level. Next Level / Meridian International. Shout out to Next Level fam, which is connected to the U.S. State Department. It's a hip hop initiative, like exchange program. Shout out to Chapel Hill too, because Mark Katz and I'll just get into a whole bunch of juniors. I'll get into a whole bunch of that. But anyway, that was the first formal time.
Okay.
That it's not that I don't think that it wasn't that I wasn't doing it on some level, because to your point, this is just who we are. So I'd be in classrooms before Next Level, and I'd say certain things, the way I talk, the way I speak to the students. And I remember being in the Bronx and in Mount Vernon and have different students, different classrooms, different ages, and they'd be like, you do more than teach. what else do you do? And
Yeah.
I've even had little kids say to me, like, what are you, a rapper? And I'm like, yeah. It was like first, second grade. I said, yeah. And they were like, no, you're not. You know, they would just jump that, no, you're not. But it's the way
Yeah.
that I spoke to them. It's the way I was quick on my feet with words, the
Right.
cadence of the classroom. And they'd be like, yeah, she doing some different things. So I think part of it is just inherently who we are. And you can't help that. The way I dress, the way I talk, the way I connect with them. So that's hip hop right there. That I was doing it on an unconscious level, like already infusing it because that's who I am. When it was formal was through Next Level. It was this opportunity. I was living and teaching in Chicago at the time, and I saw it online, and I was like, wow, that seems really cool. Like teaching hip hop, I could go to a different country and actually teach emceeing or collaborate and share. Rather, it's more of a sharing experience, what I know.
I wanted to ask you about that because I had that, so you taught abroad, Peru, Brazil. You've been to Brazil, right? Recently?
No,
with
I haven't been to Brazil yet, but I appreciate you manifesting it for me, Words, because that means I'm going there next. Let's get it.
So you've been to Peru, you've been to Barbados, all right?
Yeah, and then
absolutely. Where did you go with J. Rolls?
We went to Rwanda, to Africa. Yeah.
Oh, Africa. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's that been like as far as traveling abroad?
It's been so humbling and magical in the sense, not necessarily 18 hours on the plane is not magical, but the experience of saying, hey, I'm an MC, this is something cool I might want to share with you. You know, the whole never thought hip hop would take it this far, like for real. So to be able to go to other countries and share what I am passionate about and what I know, and learn from what's already over there and be inspired by the level of passion that's there and artistry that's there, because it's there, heavy, everywhere.
How did you teach? Did y'all teach writing, like songwriting over there? I saw something like that, right?
It's like songwriting.
So how did you do that?
So,
like teaching in another country, what's like maybe the first thing you probably ask them to do? Because you coming from here and it's our native language to be rapping, but you're trying to help some people that speak their language. So, but I'm sure some of the methods still can work. What's kind of like one of the things you would teach them?
So what's cool about Next Level is that if you go to a country and it's a foreign language that's not, you're not fluent to or not versed in at all, they will provide, through the embassy, they will provide translators. Dope. Right. And so when I went to Peru, I had a translator on site. What's interesting though about the idea of like having the translator, it's so helpful. One, however, it's kind of like when you're online and there's a delay because you're saying something, you have to wait for it to be translated. You have to wait for them to kind of get what you're saying, the concept of what was just given. Then you have to wait for the translator to, it's like a give. It's really a back and forth that sometimes the back and forth can delay the aha moment.
Yeah.
Okay. However, it was so imperative to have the translator. But what I realized started to happen in a weird, magical like way, I started saying things and they were like, they were getting it. And then they would say things in their language. And I was like, and I'd be like, did they just say, I was like, did they say that? I say to the translator, is that what they were saying? She was like, yeah, how did you know that? And I just started picking up certain things between body language, certain words here and there, but mostly like the feeling of, oh, you meant that, right? It shows how powerful different forms of language is, because I started to understand things without really understanding fully the language, which was really impressive. But
that would probably be also attributed to your experience with diverse learners and differentiating instruction and just kind of open to the idea that this is not going to be easy. So I got to adjust a little bit and figure this out.
Absolutely. And to your point, I use, like, in the very educative terms, I use kinesthetic things too. So I did bar counting with them. They thought I was crazy, but we jumped rope. And so every time was like the rope hit, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4
Right.
counts. And so I was teaching them bar counting, doing jumping rope. And they were
Right.
like, yo, she wild. But it was actually really cool. And the other thing that was cool about it, one, obviously there's time involved. You have counts that are now sonic. You're hearing the counts. And then the other thing is breath control, because you're trying to say it while so you're practicing quite a few different aspects there. But
Right.
history, like going into like some foundational things about what's important to hip hop, asking them what they know and respecting that they do come with their own prior knowledge of what this is and they practice this. And that's where the exchange part of it comes, because you're like, yo, it's really solid out there. So you go sometimes thinking, well, I know this. You know what you know, but they have a wealth of knowledge there too, and respectfully. So the experience in Peru was amazing. At the end of these residencies, they do a culminating show where whatever it is that they worked on, they present. Yeah. I like to give them the freedom with, like, there were some instances where we wrote a song, they wrote a song, they did the hook, but they may not have retained the whole verse yet, which I can respect because it takes me a minute too. So sometimes we had the hook and then they would spit an older verse, right? Rather than something they did right there. Or if they tried to venture into their new verse, it was in a cipher rather than in a song structure. But that can look different, because when we went to Barbados, they were straight pumping out songs. Shout out to Unlearn the World.
Had them doing Unlearn the World. Yep, big him up.
Yeah,
he was stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they were doing some real stuff. Purple Haze was out there too. Shout out to Purp was there too. So many different artists, but in regards to emceeing. And so they were working on song development. And when I went to Barbados, I went out as a site manager, not a teaching artist, which is different. It's still with, the same organization, but it's from an administrative standpoint, which is a whole nother thing as well. I learned a lot there, things that I did well, things that I didn't do as well, that I'm like, okay, for the next round, it's a learning experience. And then Africa was just such an experience to be able to go, Peru too. I had been to Barbados before, not in that way. So it was really cool experiencing it that way. But Africa, I mean, that's the farthest that I've traveled. Yeah. And to just be, brown woman, it's like Black brown woman, that in itself is mind blowing, to just be able to touch Mother Earth and be like, okay, we're here at the motherland right here for a quick moment. It was a quick trip. But
to hear about it for years and years and years and years, from even the essence and being younger, how important Africa was in hip hop culture growing up. We used to wear medallions, all those things about it. And then to go there, I'm sure it was like almost like, wow, like I didn't know I would make it here,
Exactly. But it always humbles you, because like in a classroom, no matter what you think you're always going to be challenged and inspired by new people, and find new ways to connect. And that's one thing that I always believe is, like, you got to have connection first. You got to find some way to connect. And luckily for us, we all connect through the culture to different levels. And so there's that's already built in, which helps all of us. But also just being really an advocate for them expressing their voice and letting them know. This was something I really learned in Peru. Like, there was so much talent there. But in our very human form, a lot of people didn't realize how amazing they were. And so it was about letting them know, you're really valuable, and what you have to say is really valuable. And just in sharing something and imparting something like that helped to build their confidence in the way they started rhyming just within a week or two, just by hearing, yo, you got something here. There's some real special stuff that you're doing. They just needed validation, like we all do.
That's important for kids and people in general, just to be told, recognized, and identified for your skill or talent. Confidence is key to so many things, and opens up so many avenues to trying stuff, and feeling like, hey, you might you know what, I'm actually gonna go try this open mic tonight. You know what, I'm actually gonna put this song out. I'm actually gonna finish this book. I'm actually gonna write that. So
Yeah.
I all of these things you're saying, when you think about it, so what would be some of your best practices when writing? You know, you can give me, I say 5, but you know, give me like a couple, or if you got 5, what would you suggest are some of the best practices when writing?
Yeah, so I think I've been saying this over and over for sure. Concept. Like, what is your theme? What is your concept? What are you trying to say? Like, what is that big idea that you want to share? Or if it's just like, yo, I'm about to attack this mic and write a 16 or 22, whatever it is, then you go about it with a certain approach, right? So the conceptualization is really important. I'm really big on connection in the sense of like feeling emotion. Like, I think it's important to feel the track. I think it's important to write something that you actually care about, that matters to you, so that hopefully it might resonate with other people. I think relatability is really important in that sense. And also, you know, once you do that, if you're able to do that, it stays with someone and you don't know how that might inspire them. Back to what you were saying a moment ago. I think in order to achieve that, there has to be a sense of authenticity, like an authentic voice, which does take time to develop, right? It does take time to develop, whether you're talking about being an MC or an actor or whatever it is, or even a chef, like whatever it is, it takes a minute to really hone in on your style, your unique style, and then how you choose to present that to the world, you know? And so with that is development. Like, I think it takes a minute to develop. Understanding that your process may not be an overnight success. You know, it's going to take time to really get good at something, and just being patient with the process and respecting that evolution. And this happens in the classroom too. It's like never like I've been a fan of what this is. I just respect it. Revision. Revision. Editing, oh man, I used to hate editing. I'm not like I love editing, but I understand the power of editing. And when you refine something and you just make it stronger and better, it's just going to hit in a different way. And so although you may not love the editing process, whether you're talking about beats or rhymes, it is so important to edit so that you're tightening whatever it is that you're, gonna share, present. And I think the last thing is probably, or the last thing I could think of is committing to whatever that narrative is, like direction, flow, not just flow from a sense of cadence, which is super important. So we can use flow both ways. Cadence for sure, right? That sense of flow, but also like the flow of your narrative. Like, what direction are you taking with this? Yeah, I would say probably that. I think that's more like 6 and 8
I think
halves.
I got it. You had theme, you had emotion, you had authenticity, development. Yeah, I remember all what you said. So
that's awesome.
So the next thing would be, end of the show here and shouting out all your, places we could find you to do verses, and book you not only to rap on a song, but book you to come as a guest speaker and things like that. I think sometimes people miss out on those opportunities that they can have with us and artists as well, that are teachers and educators. So booking for the speaking engagements and everything. Give us your
totally. Thank you for throwing that out. Absolutely. I'm here for it all. So MCing, features, shows, contracting, consulting, guest speaking. Yes, yes, and yes. The easiest way I would say is Instagram. I'm on IG a lot, more than any platform, at the Queen Herawin, spelled Herawin, like on the cool screen here. So the Queen Herawin Instagram, and then my email for those who really are serious about doing something collaborative or business wise is Queen Herawin info. Queen Herawin info, info after Queen Herawin at gmail.com. Queen Herawin info. Those are really the best ways to get at me, and I appreciate
what about projects? What about projects you got coming out? You got anything?
Yeah, so I have a project I'm so excited and proud about. It's gonna be dropping like the end of August. Fingers crossed. called Awaken the Sleeping Giant. I don't think I've formally given the whole title, but now I did, so thank you, Wordsworth. Awaken the Sleeping Giant. So much amazing production and collaboration on that with artist features. I'm so inspired and humbled and grateful. So that's going to be dropping, like I said, the end of August. We're looking at other projects. I'm looking to finish a poetry book. So yeah, I'll be looking out for that. And I'm starting a new school year at another school, so I'm excited about that. And what that's going to bring with some visual art stuff. But I would say definitely the album. The album is like the main thing.
I would like to thank you once again for having you on the show and coming down, using your time, contributing to the world with the education, the music, and everything you got going on. And so those out there that have been supporters of us, make sure you can check down inside the description links. That's where I'll have all her information, my information, all the things that you need to know. And I ask you, what are your words worth? Peace.
Peace.
Sign up now at elevate.miami.edu for my course, Organized Rhyme. Looking at the word legacy, while involving some wordplay, I'll use the first syllable to build upon. We'll use the first syllable, leg. For the second syllable, we'll use an. And for the third syllable, we'll use the word knee. So now we have leg and knee. Can we use it in context with legacy? Let's just see.
Wordsworth Productions with a S.com for merch.
I got 2 books available right now. Words Are Worth Volume 1, and I also have a children's book called Socks. Age range from 12 to 15, so it's kind of like the middle school and high school age range, but adults can read it as well. Shout out to our sponsor, the Wizker. If you're into skincare, the Wizker will help prevent razor bumps and make sure you got smooth skin all around. Make sure you order it on Amazon, the Wizker. Make sure you check out Wordsworthproductions.com. There you can book me if you want to book me for shows, consultations, panels, and things of that nature. And also it'll give all the upcoming shows that I'll be attending or performing at or appearing at as well. Wordsworthproductions.com. We write plays, books, movies, anything that deals with writing and creativity. Contact us.